Today's episode of Real Talk Christian Podcast is sponsored by the Christian Standard Bible. The goal of the CSB is to be faithful to the original languages without sacrificing clarity, all while maintaining both accuracy and readability. With the beautiful designs and multiple study Bible options, everyone from adults to teens and even children can find a CSB Bible that they enjoy. Learn more at csbible.com. Again, that's csbible.com.
Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations about faith, culture, and society. I'm your host, Chris Fuller.
And this is Mark Hyde.
And on today's episode, we're going to ask the question, what should Christians do about euthanasia or mercy killing or, all those general questions? So it's going to be a deep and dark one. Mark, you ready?
Well, whether or not, here we go.
Let's go.
Welcome back to the studio, my dude.
Welcome back.
It's been 4 recording weeks.
It's been like 4 weeks, basically, since we got
together,
too.
It's been a long time, man. Yeah. You got sick, I got sick, we got sick, we all got sick. We're still kind of sick, so we sound kind of weird. We're gonna have some little coughs, sniffs, the sniffles.
Sniffleificus.
But we are back to the normal location, normal spot.
Yeah.
We're drinking. Well, I'm drinking coffee. You're drinking something that's not coffee.
Well, I'm drinking a spiced apple tea because, again, I'm still getting over being sick, and I've already had coffee today, and so I'm trying to lower the coffee.
How many different drugs did they put you on?
I lost count.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So it's not just like amoxicillin or... Actually, side note, when I got strep throat, I asked for the actual drinkable, like the pink bubble gum amoxicillin, like a kid. He just goes, I'd be giving you like gallons of that stuff. So he gave me pills.
Why, you can't do pills?
No, I just wanted to drink the bubble gum stuff like I was a kid again.
Okay.
I'm weird, man. I'm weird. Weirdo. Yeah, but yes, I'm on amoxicillin right now because I had strep throat last week.
I've got one more pill to take tonight, and then I am officially amoxicillin free.
Dude. Think about this, right? When we were kids and we would get sick, we'd be out of school for 24 hours?
Man, I've never had...
This put me on my back for 4 days.
I've had this thing for 2 weeks and it's still holding on. It's like, go away. So yeah, on top of all the heart stuff that I got going on and the messed up knee. And
I've been on a lot of drugs. You took a little bit to get into the church building today.
Yeah, I'm still hobbling around, but I'm without a cane. First time in 5 weeks. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Young Man Society.
I'm not quite the Young Man Society.
Now, did you get a fresh haircut too?
I did.
That's because you look good, my friend.
About a week and a half ago, I got a haircut.
I did not.
This is hat hair. I was wearing a ball cap all day, and this is just...
It is what it is.
But yeah,
Well, dude, so we're just going to jump into this. I got to say it.
Wait.
I've been waiting to drink this stuff with you.
But I've been waiting to do the Would You Rather.
We haven't. It's been a bit.
So let's do that one, and then we'll jump into that.
See, we're so excited to be let's podcast in real person rather than Skype and you blip out and then I blip out and then it's just weird.
Okay, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Would you rather have a flying carpet or have a car that can drive underwater?
Yo.
I'm thinking the water.
But do I get an Abu if I have a flying carpet? Because if I get a flying carpet and an Abu, just call me Aladdin. Let's go.
What if you get Jar Jar Binks with the car? We'll throw it in Jar Jar Binks so you can drive underwater. I made him cough.
You made me cough. Why would I even want Jar Jar Binks in my dream? I would not want Jar Jar Binks. Not at all. Would not. I would probably say submarine. I mean, honestly, it'd be cool to have a Boo and a magic carpet, but I think an underwater car would be pretty dope.
Heck yeah, because look,
you can go exploring underwater,
think about
bro.
How much stuff has been unexplored underwater.
But think about this: if you have a magic carpet, it's like Tesla on steroids. You don't have to drive; you just lay there and take a nap.
That's true.
You can take a nap.
If the magic carpet flies and then birds fly overhead, you can still get pooped on.
That's true. But there's no right answer living in the north because it's cold.
There's no fresh jams on the magic carpet, but there are in the underwater car. You listen to music.
That's true. Okay, let's go with car.
And drink coffee.
There you go.
All right, so
let's go with car.
Car was 41%. 59% said they'd rather have a flying carpet.
No, let's do one more. Let's do one more. We can do one more. I love these Would You Rathers. Hopefully you guys enjoy these Would You Rathers,
All right,
too.
here we go. Would you rather? All right.
Is it appropriate?
It is, but it's funny because I probably wouldn't pick either one of these. But spend a day with Beyonce or spend a day with Taylor Swift.
Yo, give me T-Swizzle. I mean, the Queen Bee, though. I mean, Beyonce, the Queen Bee. Like, she's pretty fire. But Taylor Swift? That'd be pretty dope.
I think I would go with
Taylor
Swift, but only because she's John Mayer's ex-girlfriend.
But think about this, though. Think about this. Beyonce, though, I mean, Taylor Swift has a great stage presence and persona. Would she be a little boring in real life?
Yes, I think so.
Because Queen Bee, I feel like Beyonce would, like, she'd be fun.
She'd be fun.
So I'm going to say Beyonce. I'm going to switch. I'm going to say,
right, you're gonna say
Queen Bee.
Beyonce?
I'm going to Queen Bee. Yep, Beyonce.
I'm going to go with neither, but if I had to pick one, I
I
would say Taylor Swift.
Single ladies.
So 55% say Beyonce.
Queen Bee.
45% say Taylor
Put
Swift.
me in the beehive, baby. Let's go.
All right.
And does that? I also get to hang with Jay-Z, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
Christ the King. Oh, wait, that's Kanye.
That's Kanye.
Sorry.
That's Kanye.
I'm not really into the musicians. So,
all right.
Anyways, let's talk about what we got here.
You guys can hear this. Ready?
Okay. I'm really nervous.
So, this smells awful. Oh, gross. Oh, that smells so bad. Okay,
wow.
So Beth bought this stuff. We're going to call it crap because it's going to taste like it.
Oh, dude, that
She
smells
bought this from
rancid.
Aldi's like months ago, and then we haven't podcast in person in forever. So they've been chilling in my fridge.
Is this really even drinkable?
This is the
this
Croix
toilet
Coffee Exotica. It's natural. Oh, it's the essence of Sumatra coffee and cola mixed with bubbly water.
So if you're watching on YouTube right now, I'm holding it up so you can
all
see
right,
what
so
it
we
looks like.
tried Coke coffee, and that was gross.
And yeah, but you drank it all. You drank both cans. I'm a little worried
because I
about
needed
this.
something. But I'm all right. You ready?
Cheers to you.
Cheers, LaCroix coffee. Here we go, peoples.
It's like cocoa coffee essence with water.
It kind of has that fake, like Starbucks Vista vibe. It has more flavor than a normal LaCroix, though.
It's like somebody had like a little bit of coffee left in the bottom of the cup.
And a little bit of Coke and went poop.
It's not even, yeah, maybe a little bit. But,
I can taste the cola.
But yeah, then they put a bunch of carbonated water in it. That's what it tastes like. It's more tolerable than the Coca-Cola.
I would drink this over the Coca-Cola coffee.
I would never buy either one, but if I had
No. But like,
one,
let's say we're at the beach, right? And someone whips out one of these suckers. Would you be like, I'm hot, I'll drink this? I would drink. I mean,
would first ask if there was anything else that they had. And then if they said no,
options? Do we got options?
they said it's this or the Coke, I would say, give me the LaCroix.
You know, this is not, it smelled awful, at least for me. That smelled
It's got a weird,
gross.
I could burp real fast, and it's got a weird aftertaste. It's
sarsaparilla, is that what I'm smelling?
I don't know.
Ingredients. Here's the ingredients.
Yeah, natural
Only carbonated water and naturally essenced. So does that mean cola and Coke? Or sorry, does that mean like cola and coffee like farted in this thing?
My body's rejecting it. I know
it's
that.
It's an essence. That's like a fart.
I've got the burps going on, and I've only taken 2 sips, so it's rejecting it. Anyways.
So that is not Real Talk Christian Podcast approved.
No.
But you know what a coffee that is? Real Talk Christian Podcast approved.
What coffee,
We got a
Mark?
coffee sponsorship. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the bag. It's called Brew It Forward Coffee Company. I graduated high school with one of the girls who her and her husband founded this company down in Pennsylvania.
Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. It says so at the bottom.
Yep, and over in Pennsylvania. And
Single
check
origin.
this out. So they both come from broken homes. Both their parents are divorced. And so they were just talking. They love coffee. And he actually has like a legit roaster. Yeah, eat some of these. Now, they sent us this bag probably about 3 weeks ago. So it's been sitting for just a little bit. Oh, wow, that hurt my ear. So it's been sitting for just a little bit. But tell you what, dude.
It's phenomenal.
So
I've been drinking it at home. It's great.
It's
people.
some good stuff. Like we don't say coffee's great all the time on this show.
I've been out and about. Well, I've been out of my own coffee for a while. And then Mark's like, hey, dude, we got a bag from our sponsor. I'm like, sweet. And it is delicious. I'm like, I don't even feel like I have to roast right now. Because
and it's so good. Now, I mean, there's, like, you know me, I like the ones where it's like the Honduran or the Ethiopians where it punches you at the first hit.
Yeah.
This stuff is just smooth.
It's very smooth.
I'm drinking some right now. You got to wake up in like 2 hours.
It's got like a caramel essence with the bean when I eat the bean.
Yeah, and you can tell it's from South America just based on the flavor. But
But that's Brew It Forward. Check them out online, or you could order online. They got subscription boxes.
Yes, so brewitforwardcoffeeco.com.
Right.
Brewitcoffeeforwardco.com.
And then tell them about what happens since they're listeners.
So if you're a listener to the show, you go to brewitforwardco.com
and you like
order coffee, not the subscription. If you order just a bag, use the coupon code RTC for 10% off.
What?
10%, which covers basically
coupon?
shipping.
10%.
10% off. Just put in RTC. Now, here's the one thing I do want to say, all right? So we actually get no money from this sponsorship.
All we get is a coffee.
All we get is the coffee. But here's why we love it, besides we just love Jared and Marianne. All the proceeds go to organizations that are helping broken families, kids that are found in broken homes, like Bethany House, which is a transitional housing supportive services for young women aging out of foster care.
Right.
Ronald McDonald Network, which most people know of them. Our Father's House, which they provide supplies and comfort items to children in foster care. Young people education that goes towards a bunch of poverty, goes to women care pregnancy centers. So basically, when you support this coffee, literally, it's just the fact of they want to help people that are helping kids who are foster kids, who are in broken systems, come from broken homes, which, we're all about that.
Right.
I mean, especially I marry I don't want to use that word, but she's a saint. Beth is a saint with the foster kids. And
we've interviewed kids from broken homes.
Right, and we've interviewed we interviewed Beth, we interviewed our little neighbors of Paraguay.
And we have an upcoming interview that you guys will be able to listen to in a couple of weeks with Back-to-Back Ministries.
So taking care of poor and the desolate is a big, big deal for us here on RTC. And this coffee does just that. Yeah. So brewitforwardco.com. RTC
Is it Coffee
coupon.
Co? Is it Brew It Forward?
Oh, sorry, brewitforwardcoffeeco.com, or just Google Brew It Forward Coffee Company. That will bring it.
That'll take you to it. And then remember, whatever you choose there, as long as it's not the subscription, type in RTC on the coupon code, and you'll get 10% off.
But I will say that subscription is real nice. It just shows up, and it's a different. And here's the deal too. So Jared, he will actually roast it and ship it within the same. He tries to do the same day.
Right.
So you're getting this coffee generally within 3 to 4 days of when it was actually roasted.
So, and
you talk about this because this is your jam.
Okay, so this is the thing. You can tell that he roasts it, bags it, and ships it because when it arrived to Mark and I, the bag was blown up. It was solid air.
And I thought that was on purpose.
Because of the degassing, which I've talked about in previous episodes, where the beans have to sit basically 24 hours to degas, or else you have that happen, which means it was fresh. He freshly roasted it, bagged it, and shipped it. And it got to us in a couple days, and it was so good. And as soon as I cut it open, it was like, that smells wonderful.
It was a hit, man.
Check it out.
So brewitforwardcoffeeco.com and to get your coffee. Well, I think it's time to get into this. Oh, we got to read a review. I'm so excited to get in the conversation. I'm sorry.
Roll it back, sir.
I feel like all I want to do is jump to the next thing. And you're like, bro, back this gravy train up.
Stop in the name of love.
Oh, I was thinking, stop. Collaborate in this.
Oh, okay.
Ice is back with the
we're way different. Anyway, so October 5th, we got a review. I know this is quite a ways after that, but we've actually been getting quite a few reviews. Thank you, listeners.
Awesome.
Keep them coming. We're going to keep reading them. And don't forget, if you send us your information via Facebook, email, text, stuff like that, you'll get a little mini swag bag, which is basically, it's our sticker for our, a car sticker or a computer sticker. I've got it on the back of my.
And if you did not get one, hit me up so I can resend it.
It's this sticker right here if you're watching on YouTube. And then we got new pins, and Janelle's like, I love these pins better than the old ones.
Oh, really? Oh, I missed the OG pins.
See, I like them too. I like the new ones. They just look sweet.
The new ones
look really
fresh.
expensive.
And if I didn't get one too, and you're supposed to get one, and you're like, where's my mini swag bag? My bad. Just email me again, please.
Email us. Actually, Janelle said she would take that over for us. So we'll make
Praise
sure.
of the Lord.
We will make sure it gets to you because Janelle is
about to have a little worship dance praise break right now.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, we got this this review back on October 5th. Do you want to read it? You want me to read it?
You read it. I love the name, but
all
read
right.
it.
It says awesome podcast by DJ Mays. Right? Mays, that's what it sounds like? Yeah, DJ, I'm sorry if I butchered it.
That's what I'm hearing.
So it says, I listen to them every day at work, and I love all of the conversation that they have about the Lord and coffee as well. You know we got to talk about the Lord and coffee. Come on now. So
DJ Mays.
Thank you, DJ Mays. And like I said, reach out to us.
My question is you a real DJ or is your name DJ? Because if you legit is like, yo, what's up? It's DJ Mays. Like,
that's a cool DJ name.
DJ Mays.
Yo, what's up with DJ Mays?
Bro, okay. Patrick, is mayonnaise an instrument? DJ Mayonnaise. I'm just saying. I am just saying, all right, did we hit all the things?
I think we
hit all of the things. All right, dude, lead us into this one. And I'm going to cough again because my throat's going nuts.
All right, you cough again. So this question actually came from one of you listeners. We are actually having some correspondence. I believe this was via text. I'm so hard because a lot of you guys are reaching out to us and continuing the conversation, which we absolutely love. And we encourage you guys to continue to do that with us. And it's not just about topics we've talked about. This is we haven't talked about euthanasia.
Nope, not yet.
And he's like, hey, I got a couple questions for you. Can we talk about this? It's like, yes, we can. And so, this was a good conversation with somebody through, I believe, via text of, what do we do about euthanasia? And I know it's not super popular here in the United States, but I know in places like Canada and places overseas,
Canada, big time.
It's gaining more popularity.
The Nordic countries as well, I believe.
Yeah, so it's gaining a lot more popularity, and so we want to speak on it. What's the Christian's stance, or what should the Christian stance be on euthanasia? But first, you know me, I always like to define what it is we're talking about. So what is euthanasia? Well, this comes from medicine.missouri.edu.
Oh, okay.
And it says euthanasia is the practice of ending the life of a patient to limit the patient's suffering. The patient in question would typically be terminally ill or experiencing great pain and suffering. The word euthanasia itself comes from the Greek words eu, which means good, and thanatos, which means death. The idea is that instead of condemning someone to a slow, painful, and undignified death, euthanasia would allow the patient to experience a relatively good death.
Yeah, so basically it takes away a lot of the pain and suffering that someone could be dealing with and just go on to the afterlife.
And there's other terms for it. We talked about it a little bit before, the honor death.
Honor death, mercy killing. What's the other one? Physician-assisted suicide. They don't like to use that word.
That one's
PAS,
yeah. But it was physician-assisted
which is
suicide.
a different matter. But euthanasia, normally it revolves around the old, the sick.
Right. Or somebody's, like they said, who's terminally ill, really sick, in a lot of pain, suffering, stuff like that. So, you ready to jump in?
I am. And,
this is a hard conversation.
I didn't realize we were going to do this one tonight. But this past week, I was listening to Unbelievable with Justin Briley, and there was a conversation between two people. One who was in favor of assisted... what did they call it? Basically, they were okay with ending someone's life, especially, and they were two Christians. They were okay with it. Then there's another person that pitted against it, and they were like, this is not okay.
Right.
And it's one of those things where I feel like for us who have a pro-life view of things, we instantly just go, oh, euthanasia, that's awful, that's terrible, and we just move on. But I guess my question, and that's what the thing about tonight is there even a conversation around this?
Right.
Because apparently it's okay in so many parts of the world.
Right. So I think there is a conversation, and I'm going to kind of play both sides of the fence, if I can. And then we can go into final thoughts, and I'll tell you exactly what my final thought is at the end of everything. But I kind of want to play both sides of the fence.
Okay, go for it.
So first of all, to have this conversation, we got to talk about, all right, you know us, this is Real Talk Christian podcast, so we want to see, what does the Bible say? What's there biblically to be for or against it, right? Well, let's go for against it right now.
Against it, okay.
So let's start off with how much does God value life? So when we talk about life, there are a lot of articles that I read, they tie euthanasia in with suicide, with murder, abortion. They tie it all in together because it's the value of a life.
Right, because we're talking about value of life. And so what is God's value of life? 1 Corinthians 3:16 through 17 says, do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. So that's a pretty bold statement, right? It talks about if anybody destroys God's temple, God's going to destroy them. Whoa, okay, easy there. All right, so Psalm 139, 13 through 14. For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. This is David talking to God. It's a prayer to God. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. So David is acknowledging that God formed him in his mother's womb, knitted him together. He's fearfully and wonderfully made. This is a pretty
Christianese verse that's used a lot. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. God's
It's
no
the
reason why-
women's ministry verse.
Exactly.
Classic women's ministry verse. Not to say that it
And
shouldn't
it's funny
be, but it
because
should be.
139 at the end of it is your prayer that you like to throw on students. And
Dangerous prayer.
yeah,
Search me and know me and see my heart and see if there's any wicked way in me.
Yeah, that's
lead me in the way everlasting.
it's the end of this chapter. So Romans 5:6-8. For while we were still weak, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us, that while we were yet sinners, still sinners, Christ died for us. So it's showing the value that, hey, Christ loves us so much that even as sinners, he sent his son to die for us because he values our life.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of what passages. It might be back in the 1 Corinthians one, where the fact of, God paid the price for your body, so therefore glorify God in your body.
Right.
And how can we glorify God if we are choosing to do something that is not necessarily ethical? Like, and maybe this is jumping too far forward, but I think of Romans 1, like Romans 1, either 18 or Romans 1:28, I think, where it talks about where the fact that God gave them over to themselves because we worship the created things rather than the creator.
Right.
And a lot of times we focus more on us than we do on God and how God views the world.
Right.
Because we look at it from our point of view,
Right.
our lens. And so when we see, okay, does God value life? Well, he created it. He redeemed it. He saved it. He sanctified it. He's going to glorify our bodies.
Yeah.
And, that's what I think of. There's that, I don't remember what the Christian movement, well, not Christian, but more of a Christian sect, I would say, an offshoot back in the New Testament time where it's not Gnosticism, but basically you could do whatever you wanted to your physical body because it doesn't matter because your soul's the only thing going on to heaven.
Right.
But in reality, no, God actually cares what we do with our bodies.
Right.
And in fact, we're supposed to glorify God with our bodies.
Correct.
So
Well,
we know that God cares about it.
Well, we're made in his image. We've had
We're his image bearers,
We've had this conversation. It's an old podcast of made in the image of God. We go back to the beginning of Genesis where he says, "Hey, let us make man in our image," and so he values that we were set apart from the rest of creation for a special purpose.
And that's the only thing that sets us apart from creation, the fact of animals were just created, whereas mankind was made in God's image.
Well, in God's image.
Because we're his image bearers.
And where else does it say that God breathed the breath of life into the rest of creation? He didn't,
Nowhere.
but he breathed the breath of life into man. And so that sets us apart.
And that kind of goes in the conversation, too, of, okay, so what about animals and killing animals? And I heard a really fascinating, again, an unbelievable conversation between should Christians be vegetarians or not based on what we should do with animals. But it's more the fact of part of what the conversation was is should we abuse animals? No, but God gave us all things for us to, and I mean, obviously we're called to have the creation mandate of rule over the creation, have dominion. Thank you, and oversee it and make sure it works well.
Take care of it.
But at the same time, God gave us these things as food.
Well, yeah, we
and
see
that's
that.
what makes it different to kill a chicken for food than it does to kill
And
Billy Bob for food.
We actually see that post-flood when God's talking to Noah, and he's giving instructions to Noah right before he says, "Go forth and multiply." To Noah, he says, "Hey, I've given you all these things that you shall kill and eat and do all."
And
this
even
stuff
and even with Peter, because Peter was like, "Oh, this is unclean. I can't touch this." And the sheet came down with all the animals, and he says, "Don't call unclean what I have termed or what I have deemed clean."
Right.
So we know there's differences between us and other parts of creation.
Definitely. So I would say we can't lump the rest of creation in with us when we're talking about this.
Right, because there's a lot of times like horses or dogs or other animals, cats, where you hear of, oh, well, we need to put them down.
Right.
Like, this cat's dealing with kidney disease, this dog is dealing with this, and you can let them live and they can suffer for the next who knows, or a horse, like, if they break their leg, they can't do anything.
But you know what they always say? Well, it's the most humane thing.
It's the most humane thing to do. And I think that's what gets brought into this conversation of, specifically, and this isn't just the fact of like, oh, you know what? Screw this. I'm depressed. I'm bored. Just let's go kill me now. Euthanasia is a very clear picture of it's someone with a terminally ill disease.
Right.
Like I'm thinking, like someone who has Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or something where they know in the next 10 years, they will not be themselves if they're even around. Right. And it's like, I've heard the argument of someone has Alzheimer's. Well, they want to die with their kids remembering who they were, and they want to die remembering who their kids were. Right. Rather than like, this is grandpa. We know he's crazy and he's mean and he's vicious, but he has Alzheimer's. And so some people would say it's more humane, it's more morally justifiable to why would you let someone live in that reality when they don't have to?
Right. And the Bible speaks about this. But it's a little bit further down the line.
Okay.
But I mean, what should our view of death even be? Right?
Oh, that's a good question.
What's God's view of death? I mean, is it something
because God cares about life?
I mean, because we're talking Christians. How should Christians view all this? So as Christians, I mean, should we be like, whatever, come on, death, because I'm going on to the kingdom, so I pray for death. I like Paul said, I pray I was with the Father, but he's got me here still being with you guys.
Yep,
you
true.
dummies.
Philippians, right?
Yeah. So, but just a couple little excerpts, and they're in the middle of context. This is a disclaimer. They're in the middle of context that doesn't necessarily have to do with death, but they point out quick little excerpts of how it's actually viewed.
We're going to call them little nuggies. These are
little
Bible
nuggets
little Bible
in the middle
nuggies.
of another context of what like Paul's speaking about in this writer of Hebrews. So the first one, 1 Corinthians 15:26, Paul, right there at that verse 26, he goes, the last enemy to be destroyed is death. So, and the reason why I wanted to pull this in, and it's pulled out of the context, but it pertains to this, is that God views death as the enemy. This is where Paul's talking about how God's going to come, he's going to overthrow, or he overthrew death, and eventually we're going to be with him. Mm-hmm. So death is the last enemy destroyed. That's the very last thing that's destroyed. It's talking about the second coming of Christ, stuff like that. That's what chapter 15 is kind of hinting to. So the last enemy to be destroyed is death. So death is an enemy. Death is inevitable. So Psalm 89:48, what man can live and never see death? Who can deliver his soul from the power of Sheol? Selah. So we see and we know through personal experience, through Scripture, nobody other than 2 or 3, I guess, well, no, 2. 2.
Elijah.
Elijah, and Jesus.
No, there's another one. Methuselah?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to think of. I thought there was a third one.
You keep going. I'll use the Google. I use the Google.
There's one more in there, and I cannot remember who it was. But yeah, so besides those few exceptions, throughout all of history, throughout all of
Enoch,
that's who it was.
Side note, if you just Google who never died before the Bible, the other one was Vampire Diaries. Ooh, who never died in Vampire Diaries.
Wow.
So just in case you wanted to know.
So throughout all human history, people have been dying. I mean, that's part of the curse that came upon us from Genesis on.
But side note, I've actually heard that a different idea and a different theory that death is actually one of the greatest merciful acts God did. Because then we would never, because, it was the idea of, in the garden, now there's conversations around this, but the fact of don't let them in lest they eat of the tree that will, what was the other tree? There's a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then basically the tree of like eternity or something.
Tree
like
of life.
Tree of life. And they didn't want them to eat from the tree of life because then they would never die.
But he said that they could eat from any tree except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that if they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they will surely die.
Well, I'm talking about after they ate. That's why they kicked them out of the garden too, I thought.
Well, yeah, because they disobeyed
God. And so it's actually a mercy that we get to die.
See, I think it's a consequence.
I don't know. I've heard that theory. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a consequence because the wages of sin is death.
Right.
But the gift of God is eternal life.
Exactly. So there's too many scriptures that would tell me
that's
it's
true.
a consequence.
That's true.
But anyways,
we just talked about this where sometimes your theories get changed while we're
yes,
talking on the podcast.
Did. We were just talking about that with Scott.
Yep.
So Hebrews 9:27, it says, and just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. And then I kind of stopped there. Like I said, these are little nuggets.
Little nuggies.
Within a bigger context. But they show just the hints of the view of death. We're appointed to die. Everybody's going to die. It's inevitable. Ecclesiastes 9:5. I did a lot of Ecclesiastes in the show notes of this one. I really liked it for whatever reason. For the living know that they will die, but the dead don't know anything. There is no longer a reward for them because the memory of them is forgotten.
But the dead don't know snot.
They don't know nothing.
They don't know none.
Nada.
There is no longer a reward for them because their memory of them is forgotten.
Right.
Woof.
Yep. Well, and think about it. We know the big figures, and we have some history on like George Washington and stuff. But what about, Jane Smith?
Well, drive through the cemetery. We have cemeteries all around here, just drive through those, and who knows who's in there.
Right, exactly.
Somebody does.
I don't know anything about them. Or do they? I mean, there's the forgotten soldier. I mean, we got a whole monument built to the forgotten soldier that nobody knows who it is. I mean, it's just one of those things. And then the other thing that we should know and how we should view death is God takes no pleasure in it. And he actually did this during Ezekiel 18:32. It says, "For I take no pleasure in anyone's death. This is the declaration of the Lord God. So repent and live." Now they're speaking to the nation of Israel. But I thought it was really interesting that the Lord God, through Ezekiel, says, "I take no pleasure in anyone's death." So that means he's not happy about people dying.
So death is the enemy that we have to deal with. God's not happy about it, but it's going to happen.
And you're exactly. You got it. So there, podcast done. Wait a second.
No hope. There's
we're
no
talking
hope in
about
that.
euthanasia. We're not talking about death, right?
So death itself is not good, but it's all going to happen. We all live, we all die.
So, now we know what death is, and it's inevitable. Now we dive into the question, is it okay to take a life, such as murder, abortion,
and I think that's where this conversation
suicide
comes, because I think abortion's in a different category. Right. Because euthanasia, the person is a living, breathing soul. And it's like, people have the argument of abortion, well, it's just fetus cells. It's a potential human. It's not a real human. People use that argument. Whereas euthanasia, it's like, no, I see Jane. I seen Susie. I see Rick. Like, I can see them. Like, they're a person. And then that goes into personhood theory still a little bit, where it's like, okay, well, what makes person a person? Is it their brain activity? Can they dialogue? Is it the same person?
Well, it's changing all the time.
Right. And so that's what people say about euthanasia, the fact of, okay, well, if they've dropped below what makes a person, well, then they're kind of just wasting space at this point. Like, why are we paying $10,000 in medical bills and hospital beds to keep them afloat when they ain't going to live?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the way we should think. I'm just saying that's one of the ways people think.
Right. But it's the same as, like, okay, people with any type of disability. This is how the Spartans were known for this. They would kill babies that did not meet certain standards. They would kill people in their own city, Sparta would.
Well, because it was an honor and shame society.
Not only that, but you had to be physically of a certain demeanor.
Because this is Sparta, boy.
Yeah, it was Adolf Hitler before Adolf Hitler is basically what it was, superior race. That's what they did. And so it's like, do we really want that? Do we really want to be like, okay, we're going to push it all the way to you have no value because you're not, 6 foot, 160 pounds, muscular, and smart. And
I think those are the easy ones that even, I feel like even if you're not a believer, there's the law, the moral law written on our hearts of just, that's like, people who think that's okay, you a little messed up.
Well, right. Well, so we don't do that. We don't say people with disability. In fact, most of the time, society in a whole pities them. We're like, oh, we feel so bad. Let's make special parking spots for them. Let's make sure they have all the care that they need, at least here in America. That's what we do.
Well, then there's even kids with mental retardation or wow, I'm having a really bad brain fart. I
don't know where you're going.
I can't remember. But basically, it's like people who are normal people who have physical, mental disabilities.
Yeah.
And so,
like Asperger's and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so, does that make those? I don't want to say those people, but does that make that person any less of a human than us because they, their wires are not all perfectly crossed like ours are? Like that's not
my wires are crossed wrong.
And I'm trying to think of how to say it kindly, but more the fact of it doesn't make someone just because someone has some sort of mental, physical disability doesn't make them any less of a human than anybody else.
Or any less value to society. Christians or God. Not even just society, but to God himself, the creator. They are put together perfectly in the way he wanted them to for a purpose. And so, let's try to answer this. Is this type of killing, suicide, euthanasia, where I'm going to kind of lump it all into one, even though I know there's separate issues with each one, but let's lump it all together. Talk about it a little bit. So
let's go for it.
Leviticus, if we go back to the Levitical law, we could go straight to the 10 Commandments and be like, well, it says thou shalt not murder. We could also go to Leviticus 24:17. It says, whoever takes a human life shall surely be put to death. But then they go, oh, but Chris, stop. We're not under the old Levitical law. We're not under. Okay, so let's go back to Genesis, right? So the beginning, this is with God talking to Noah. And he said, and for the lifeblood, I will require a reckoning from every beast. I will require it, and from man, from his fellow man, and I will require reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. This is what he's speaking to Noah post-flood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, Chris, hey, that was way back then. All right, so let's move a little bit further. Let's go to King Solomon, Proverbs 6:16 through 19.
Autism. I'm sorry. That's what I was thinking of. Autism. Keep going.
So 6:16 through 19 of Proverbs says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him.
We need to jump back into that series.
Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. So those are things that the Lord hates. I don't see anything. The Lord's the same yesterday, today, and forever, so I'm assuming he still hates them. And that 7 of them are abomination. But,
yep.
I mean, who's counting? But, Chris, that's Old Testament. All right, let's jump into Paul then.
To the new.
Let's jump into Paul. Romans 13:9 through 10 says, for the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you should not steal, you should not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So, hey, there's your, committing, don't murder,
Right, and I know it's a historic Catholic belief, and even some Protestants believe it too, of, suicide is the only sin that causes you to, quote unquote, lose your salvation. And so that's maybe not the sin that's the sin that leads to death, I guess. So that's the way they interpret that.
Right.
But with euthanasia, I think everyone flat out agrees where it's like, okay, a perfectly normal human being, sure, okay, we don't take those lives. But what about the person who, like, you see people who literally just are in chronic pain every day. They're bedridden. Like, I knew someone, grandma was bedridden for 10 years, never left her bed in 10 years. What do we do with people like that? Is it ethical to actually just, I'm not going to say kill them. I'm saying remove the things and let them go.
Well, so I want to speak to something first. You brought up something,
I can't stop
and
coughing.
I know this is a question that has been brought up a lot, and if we do not address it, it will be asked.
Okay.
At least I think it would be asked because people like to come in guns blazing sometimes when it's questioned. You said, well, we know suicide, the Catholic Church says, is a sin that you can lose your salvation over. Hold on, Pastor Mark. I got something.
It's true.
I've heard it a lot, We're Calvinists.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that nothing can separate us from the love of God.
Right.
Nor death, nor life, nor anything. Nothing can separate us from the love of God, right? If you're his, you're his. But as his, do you still sin?
Yep.
Is sin okay?
Nope.
God forbid that we should continue to sin, that grace may abound. That's what Paul says. So, yes, you may not lose your salvation, but why would the last act you want to do on earth be a sin? Especially, it's a sin not just unto yourself. It's a sin towards God because he made you.
Well, more than just, I don't want to say more than just that, but the fact it's a sin against God. It's a sin against your neighbor. It's a sin against your family.
Sure, because you cause a lot of heartbreak. But we're talking specifically euthanasia. Most of the time, families are involved with that decision process, and they're okay with it most of the time. So that's why I'm saying, hey, it's still deathly sin against God, and sin is not okay, not even as your last act or your first act. It doesn't matter.
Suicide, I want to make sure I'm clear, where I don't think, I firmly believe, like, there's pastors not lately, but pastors in the last few years who very publicly took their own life because of mental health issues or struggles, or, let's be honest, the weight of the pastor, it's pretty heavy. I don't think that they're going to walk into God and be like, yo, you did a lot of good things for me, and you were one of my children, but my children don't do that, so get out.
Let me get the book of life. Oh, your name's in it. Now it's out. Now it's in.
Got a new life written down in pencil.
Yeah, right. What is that?
I think it's
Tim
mine.
Hawkins?
I think it's Tim Hawkins.
Yeah.
But with that, the act of suicide, and I don't want to just say, that suicide is, someone should not commit suicide just because of, to make the world a sadder place.
I think I think as Christians, we should always condemn suicide.
Mm-hmm. It's not the answer.
It's not the answer.
And some people do it because they see of no lighter hope at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
And I just want to say, if you do need help and you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, call the suicide hotline.
Right.
Talk to your pastor.
Yep.
Talk to somebody. Don't and I'm on the opinion of don't just text somebody. Call and
Meet
talk
up
to
with
somebody. Right. And I don't want to say just talk to us. I'm not trying to get us out of it.
Right.
But you need someone there who's local.
Really what you need to do is if you're having those types of thoughts, call the suicide hotline, get in your car and go to somebody's house that loves you. Mm-hmm. Somebody that you know, and be with them until them thoughts subside and let them watch over you.
Yep.
We all have weaknesses, and I'm not saying that, it's something that, you'll never have it because you're a Christian. I know plenty of people that have had suicidal thoughts and attempted being Christians, and I know several Christians that have committed suicide. Personally, I know, and it's a hard thing, and it still plagues me to this day of, man, why did they just reach out to me? I would have met with them. They could have stayed at my house, those types of things.
But a lot of times people don't know.
Right, and so if you're having those thoughts right now,
do something about it.
Something.
Because
that's not the answer.
And that's the thing is, like, we all have weaknesses. Like, there's a reason why I don't have a gun in my house. There's a reason why after my ex-wife left, I made sure there was no alcohol in the house. There was no gun in the house because I didn't want to catch myself on a weak moment.
Right.
And I'm not trying to pat my back. Like, good job, Mark. But it's more the fact of those are real and present threats. And why would I even want to put that in front of me? Right. But going back to the conversation of, is euthanasia a sin? I think it's very clear to say of, yes, if it's someone who's just like, I just want to end it, I'm done, I'm peacing, I just found out I got this thing, I don't really want to go through it, so bye. Like, that's a sin, that's unethical. But I think the where the line gets really, really, really fuzzy
is the suffering part.
And I can think of like my grandma who had emphysema, so fluid was building up in her lungs, so she was on her deathbed, and they were they were just pumping stuff out. At what point do you say pull the cord versus not? And is that euthanasia? Is that killing somebody? Like, I think that's where Christians more so spend their time.
So that's where I wanted to get into. I just wanted to hit the suicide thing real quick.
I appreciate you doing that, man.
So should we let somebody suffer? Should somebody say, all right, I got to just suffer through it because it's a sin? Let's dive into it.
And I think the question too is there a purpose in suffering?
So one thing, suffering can be used. I'm not saying it is used. I'm not saying it's always this way, but it can be used for endurance. Any type of suffering can be used to build endurance in the faith. Romans 5:2-5 says, through him we have also obtained access by faith into the grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. So in some instances, I'm not saying all instances, but in some instances, suffering is good to produce endurance and endurance character. That's not always the case. So why do people suffer? Well, sometimes God has a purpose. Proverbs 16:4 says, the Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. Mm-hmm. So God has set it up to where everything that anybody goes through, there's a purpose behind it.
I mean, I'm on to read. Can I read one verse real quick, too?
Go for it.
So I pulled up 2 Corinthians, and I do want to say, if we're dealing with suffering, too, read Psalms 3. It's pretty dope. But 2 Corinthians 1 starts off with Paul, the apostle of Jesus, by God's will, and Timothy, our brother, to the church that's in Corinth, to all the saints who are throughout Achaia, grace to you and peace from God our Father, Lord Jesus Christ. And this is where it gets good. Verse 3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. He comforts us in all of our afflictions so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any kind of affliction through the comfort we ourselves receive from God. For just as the sufferings of Christ overflowed to us, so also through Christ our comfort overflows. If we are afflicted, it is for your, if we, meaning Paul and Timothy,
right.
If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we are comforted, it's for your comfort, which produces in you patience, endurance of the same suffering that we suffer. And our hope for you is firm, because we know that as you share in the suffering, so you also share in our comfort. And so it's right there's the fact the Apostle Paul was flat out saying that sometimes we suffer But it's not just for us. It's to bring us closer to God, and God's in there in the
could
midst
be
of
for
the
somebody
suffering.
else.
And that's the thing is the fact of, and I don't want to say like, okay, my dad died when I was 10, right? Did my dad die so that way I can minister to teenagers? I don't know.
We don't know the purpose of
But
God.
I do know that since I did go through this, I am now able to comfort other people who have lost their dads when they were kids. I mean, I have many people I've been able to witness to and just come alongside like, you know what? I don't just see you, I feel you. Like I know what you're going through right now. So let's go through this together.
Right.
And so we're able to do that. So sometimes our suffering, and who's not to say the suffering is going to be there for forever. You might get healed of it or God might bring you through. But how many times have we seen Christians who have dealt with intense suffering who turn around and use that to bring honor and glory to God?
Right.
People who lost limbs and they paint with their mouth, or they lose their hands so they write books with their feet.
Right.
Like there's a lot of really cool things that people are still able to do.
And suffering is a part of life.
Yeah, that's just part of being a human.
I don't think anybody has ever gone through a life and can say, hey, I've never suffered in any way, because I can tell you, you're a liar.
Right.
You have suffered in some way, whether it's
Or you're
emotionally or physically or mentally.
Yep.
Everybody's suffered something.
And most suffering is outside of our control. I mean, look at my kids. I mean, heck, I got so many kids that now have, issues because of the dumb choices their parents made.
Right.
And now these kids have to deal with it. And they could either, as they get older, look at this and go, God, why would you let this happen to me? Or God, I don't know why you let this happen to me, but I'm going to praise you through it, and I'm going to tell people about you because of this.
And let me I've shared this story before. I'm going to share it real quick and show you the difference between a Christian's hope in suffering and a person who's running from God.
Okay, go for it.
So I've talked about the story of my niece passing away, right? When she was 15 months old.
Mm-hmm. How long ago was that now?
5. She would have been 5 this year, I think. 5? No, she would have been older than that. She was born a week before Janelle and I got married. So we got married in 15. Oh, and she died the next year in 16. So, yeah, 5 years. Over 5 years now. She's been dead. And so my brother doesn't follow God. He doesn't. And I see how much it destroyed him and how hateful he is towards God because of the suffering of that. And then I've met people who have lost children, who are Christians, who, though they're sad, I'm thinking of Andy Lehman.
Andy Lehman, yeah.
Who, though they're hurt, they still glorify God in the process of their hurt. There's 2 different scenarios. And I could tell you, for me, it was the suffering that I had to do was nothing compared to my brother. But watching my brother hold my lifeless niece in the hospital was the worst day I've had. And it's nothing compared to what these parents go through. But I can see hope in those who follow Christ and no hope through those who don't.
Because the Bible even says, and this isn't with soul sleep, but the fact of, Christians back in the New Testament time, it was the fact of they've gone to sleep. Right. And one day they're going to wake up and we're going to be with them.
Yeah, Paul. Paul in First Thessalonians, I believe, is where that was at.
It's in one of them.
Yeah. So, anyways, I want to read this last scripture, and then we'll get into talking about our personal opinions on euthanasia.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. So in everything, there is a time for it, right? There's times... there's always going to be a time. There's a time for this. There's a time for that. There's a time for death. And God has appointed our days. God knows when that day of death is going to be at our doorstep. So is euthanasia, is that us playing God and trying to end our, I don't want to say sentence because that kind of sounds bad.
But is that putting the control into our own hands?
Is that why we do it? Is it for a control?
I think in some regards. I also think, and we didn't talk about this very much, is the fact of, we mentioned this before the show, though. This is where my thought immediately went was 100 years ago, we didn't have pacemaker. I mean, maybe we did. But, like
500 years ago.
There you go. But, back sometime way back when, there were no pacemakers. There were no electronic heartbeats. There was no dialysis machines. There was no way to empty fluid out of the lungs or ventilators or, even inhalers. Like, there wasn't all these things. And I feel like with us, with Western medicine and in Western society, we don't have to think about death.
Right.
We don't want to think about death. We don't want to think about suffering because you know what? We don't have to because we got something called morphine.
Well, we don't want to think about death until it causes us issues, until it starts to get in the way of what we want. So, like,
you mean like COVID?
No, I'm talking about like if my parents were terminally ill and I didn't want to take care of them anymore. And I'm like, yeah, you should be euthanized. like
I don't want to take care of you. You're getting old and whatever. But but more the fact of,
or people feeling like they're burdens
and I
on
think
their
this is where I struggle, and because I had to watch my mom go through this, especially with her sisters. Of I already mentioned this, but my grandma, she had emphysema. And she was asleep. She was responsive. I mean, she, heart was still bumping, but she was hooked up to machines.
Right.
Grandma was kept alive for machines.
Right.
And now, granted, part of that was for us to get out there so we could say our goodbyes. But they had the question, and they said, how long, like basically we can keep your grandma like this in the state for a while. So how long do you just want to keep her like this? And there were apparently some of the sisters that were like, we cannot let let mom go.
Right.
Like if we're able to keep mom alive, we're gonna keep her alive. And my mom was a side of like, why would I feel like that's that's not euthanasia. That's intentionally suffering because you're not ready to say goodbye. But my grandma apparently woke up and she was in a coma, or was I'm not sure if it was a coma or more just asleep because of all the stuff, but apparently she woke up and they asked her, they said, do you want to be kept alive? And she goes, no, I'm ready to go home. And so she made the final call. So thankfully, none of the sisters, there's 6 of them, none of the sisters had to make that decision.
Right.
But I think that's where I struggle and I have issues. And I've asked my mom, I'm like, Mama, I don't say mama, I don't know why that came out, but Mom, if you're hooked up to machines and the machines are the only thing keeping you alive, my mom's like, don't put me through that because I know where I'm going. So is that considered euthanasia? Or is that considered being a human?
So I liked what Scott said when we were just talking before we started.
In case people don't know, that's our pastor here at the church.
There's passive, and what was the other one he said?
Passive and active.
There's passive and active, and that was the best way he could have put it. He's very finesse with words, and I am not. So I was going to say there's intentional and non-intentional euthanasia.
Well, that's kind of what it is.
And that's what it. So I think that intentional euthanasia, right? You could live on your own, and somebody's sticking something in you to kill you off.
And normally it fills your lungs or it stops the heartbeat
whatever
or whatever
it's going to be. There's some sort of interaction that takes your life. I think that is
you walked in, and sometimes, a lot of times, it's physician assisted because you actually are doing it yourself.
Right. And I think that is a sin and that is wrong. And I think Christians should stand against that. Now, on the flip side, there's...
And I would even say, I would argue that for the laws of the land, because sometimes we have the conversation of, okay, should we fight for that law or not? I think that's one we could fight for, because that's not just Jesus, that's ethical practice.
You mean fight against?
Oh, fight to make sure that doesn't become allowed in our country.
Right.
I think that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. Now, if it's like you were saying, if you're being kept alive by a machine and all that, and you would die naturally without intervention, I think it's okay. I think it's okay, and not a sin to be like, let death occur naturally.
But now sometimes people are able to make these amazing, miraculous recoveries, though.
Sure.
And I think that's what people hold on to, is that recovery.
And I think it's, as a Christian, we would say, listen, pray to God. God, you're the great healer. This is what we're going to do. We're going to stop playing God and intervening. And if you're calling them home, then take them home. But you're the ultimate healer, so you can also keep them alive.
Right.
And it's taking the control out of our hands and putting the control back where it actually belongs in God's hands and saying, God, you do what you will. And I pray your will come in this situation. And
so let me ask your opinion on this, because, this is something very sensitive at our church family. We had someone who was hospitalized. I don't remember if it was a stroke or a double stroke, but basically she's been on machines for the last, 2 years. And I've always, and I'm not saying what's the right thing to do, because it's, I don't know if that's my place to tell someone in this situation, because I mean, she's hooked up to all sorts of machines. It's the fact of, will she ever make enough of recovery where she could even walk, talk again? And I go, okay, we're fighting for her to get better, and we're praying that, you know, God's healing comes upon her. But is it wrong for us? Like I look at this situation and go, are we playing God? And we're trying to keep her alive to get her better, to live off the next handful of years, but still not really live? Is it better just to let go? I think I struggle, especially in the pastor seat. I don't know how Scott deals with that.
I think it comes down to situational.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit here with nothing going on and no loved ones and say, this is how I feel. But I think it's situational. Me personally, I've already told Janelle, like, if something happened to me, hey, God's calling me home. Like, I'm not scared of death. I'm not worried. I don't ever think about death. If it comes, it comes. Even with all my medical problems going on right now, Janelle and I just had this conversation last night. She's like, we got to do this. We got to do this. What if something happens to you? I said, if something happens, it's God's time to call me home. I'm not scared of that. I welcome it. When God's got his time, I welcome that time. I don't want to go before that time. But when that time approaches, I'm not scared of that time. And I think that that's a decision that everybody in each situation has to make for themselves, and if they're put in that situation, for a family member. But to me personally, if a family member is unresponsive, showing no brain activity, and is in a vegetative state, I'm going to say, well, they're already home.
And there was that huge court case. What was that? I was in elementary, I think. Maybe junior high.
I think you were junior high, because I think I was in high school. Yeah,
I don't remember what her name was.
The girl down in Florida,
in the coma, and
Florida.
And the parents wanted to keep her alive, but her husband or fiance said it's time for her to go, because she literally, like, I mean, the second they unplugged everything, she was gone.
Right.
And then they have the ethical thing of, like, okay, well, did she feel the pain? Did she feel like she was drowning? Which I don't even want to think about that. But in the reality of us trying to use modern medicine to bring people back, I think it's I mean, again, I believe this is where, you know, we use wisdom and prayer and guidance, and sometimes the will of the person. Like, if you get hurt into an accident, they got to put you on a ventilator for a little bit.
Right.
I'm sorry, bro, you going on that ventilator.
Or same with, like, COVID. You know, people are going on ventilators and being able to come off and make full recovery. So I think
it's more the fact of, are we prolonging someone's death so that we still have them?
I think it's situational. I take a strong stance against active euthanasia.
Oh, 100%. I agree.
It's wrong.
I agree, 100%.
And I think passive euthanasia has to be taken.
But is that called death?
Has to be taken case by case. It has to be taken case by case, because I could put you, again, I'm intervening with modern medicine and putting you on a machine, but you're going to make a full recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So if I pull that, you may not make it right now because you need time for healing. So I think I just watched a video today on TikTok.
You've been sucked
Dang
in.
it. But they were showing this machine, right, that sucks the blood out and takes it through and releases the carbon dioxide out of the blood, and then it goes through and it gets oxygen and it comes back in.
Isn't it dialysis?
It's a form of dialysis, and I don't remember exactly what it's called, the medical term for it. But they use it a lot in preemies and premature babies.
Really?
They do that because their lungs aren't fully developed. But as they're doing that, it allows their lungs to continue to develop, and eventually they can take them off of that, and then they can breathe normally.
That's pretty cool.
So to me, that's a good thing to put them on that machine, and without that machine, they would die. And so I think that is valuing of a life. But then again, if you're in a vegetable state showing no signs of brain activity and you've been that way for years, are we intervening in a bad way, playing God?
Right.
So I think it's got to be taken case by case, like you said, very prayerfully, thoughtfully, and
it doesn't take away the hardness of that decision.
Sure, no, not at all.
In all honesty, this sounds really bad. I mean, I would much rather, like, I'm thinking, like, I'm going to have to make this call with my siblings about my mom one day. And
hopefully not. Hopefully she just dies of natural causes.
Well, it's going to sound bad, but I hope Mama just goes when it's time to go, rather than
asleep in her bed. That's what I would say.
These so hard decisions of, you know, should she stay or should she go? Like, that's, I mean, I hope you caught
Oh,
the
should I
reference.
stay or should I go?
But it's I feel for those that have to make that decision, and I'm not trying to draw any humor out of that.
Right.
But it's more the fact of I honestly hope I don't have to make that call. And now my mom put it in her will, and she told me since I was since my grandma passed away, I was like 13. She goes, if I'm ever like that, don't keep me like that, because I don't want to live that way.
Right.
And I think that's part of the Christian hope of there's more to come.
Yeah.
Like, bro, this is just the opening act.
Right.
Like, we ain't done yet.
This is the first chapter
of
an entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. Whoa.
So we're gonna be here a long time, people.
So let's
coming out of it.
Let's recap here and a final thought, because we're approaching the hour mark. And
I've already said my final thought, so you wrap it up, man.
So I just want to go over kind of what we talked about and just kind of condense it down here a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I think that we can agree that active euthanization, suicide, murder, abortion, wrong. Sin, do not encourage, fight against.
Correct.
Passive is a little bit more difficult. It's one of those areas where it's got to be situational.
Well, you're not taking a life. You're trying to. Are you going to prolong?
Are you taking a life, or are you unjustly prolonging the life? We see that God values life. We also see that death is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm going to use your catchphrase here. At the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day, follow the conviction of the Holy Spirit on the passive part of it. But anything else other than passive, out of your control, like, all right, they're either going to be nothing, and I let them go because they're just deteriorating and they're suffering so bad, and there's no hope for recovery. And so if I just stop intervening, they will die naturally, and I will try to make them as comfortable as that. And the hospice situation.
Which hospice is, I think a Christian organization did that in order to help people
just
not suffer as much.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm all for that. I'm all for a hospice situation of pump them up with morphine to help them pass. If they're going to pass naturally, pass as painlessly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I know
it doesn't make it easier.
Some people are against that because you start doing too many drugs and you're kind of out of your mind, and some people take stances against that, and that's a whole nother conversation. But that's at the end of the day, that's what it's got to be. Stand against intentionality of killing of any sort, whether it's yourself,
shedding
somebody
of
else,
innocent
or whatever.
blood.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And seek wisdom from God on the rest of it. So,
time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
Well, bro, that was a harder conversation.
Deep
that was
and dark.
not cheery. Hopefully, the next conversation will be more cheery, happy.
yeah, it's always hard to go from that and then listen to my kids and be like, oh,
so cute.
nice, such young life.
But we got to end the show with some fun facts from the Fuller. So, dude, I always ask if you got one, and I know you got one. So what you got for us tonight?
Did you read it or no?
I did read it.
Oh, okay.
Because it was right there. I'm like, oh,
right
there it is.
there. All right, so the fun fact of the day.
This is pretty dope, though. This is pretty dope.
The original name of the search engine Google was back rub. So when your wife goes, hey, I want a back rub, you'd be like, well, the computer's right over there.
Yo, I got you. What you want me to look
what
up?
you want to
Mama?
look up
What
here
you
now?
look up?
I got you on the back rub. It was renamed Google after the Google, which is the number 1 followed by 100 zeros.
Now, I actually did know that. I didn't know where the name Google came from, because it's supposed to represent the thousands of search results that you can get by just going to Google.
Or maybe it's part of the Illuminati. I don't know.
Why did you go there?
Because I watched some of that on TikTok.
Somebody's going to be putting out their tin hat real quick and be like, oh, no. The Illuminati.
He said that we should do an episode. That would be a good Halloween episode.
Oh, goodness.
Maybe for next year.
I don't even know where to begin with the Illuminati, man.
We got to get Janelle because she knows it all.
All I know,
she did so much research.
All I know is they did a good job when it came to National Treasure.
It was pretty phenomenal.
That's all. Fun fact: have you seen? Not fun fact, but have you ever seen like Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons with Tom Hanks?
I have not, because of so much
it's some good
falsehood.
Crap. It's some good
falsehood
stuff,
that
though.
it spreads.
I enjoyed the Da Vinci Code. I'm not
Did
gonna
you?
lie. Well,
Yeah,
it's like it's I mean, the author flat out says, like, this is a story, and I just happen to use Jesus.
Okay, but it's on the flip side, right?
Oh, so many people took it and went crazy.
So on the flip side, Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, right? I don't watch the Left Behind series for the same reason, personally.
Well, I think Left Behind is some bad theology.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why I don't watch Angels and Demons and Da Vinci
goodness.
Code.
Well, either way, what I was going to say with that is the fact of that's. I know about the Illuminati because of movies. That's all I'm trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say. I don't know anything else. But you know what I do know? People could reach us so easily nowadays, man. With technology, we got the website, realtalkchristianpodcast.com. All the links are right there for Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and the phone number and the contact form for the email. People, please hit us up. We love to chat with you. If you text us, you're probably going to get Chris. If you Instagram us, you're probably going to get me.
Both.
Or both. Or if you get Facebook, it's a flip of a coin, and we'll just kind of...
whoever gets to it first.
And sometimes email is the exact same way.
And typically, like, I like to do the little paragraphs with my name before I start my sentence, so everybody knows who
Normally, I'll do Fuller and I, and then go, Mark.
Yeah, right. Mark.
And then just keep going from there. But if you see the word dope in a text, it's probably not from Fuller. It's probably not from Fuller. But either way, guys, just like always, we're glad you've been joining with us for the RTC. I was going to say the RTC family. That's kind of weird. But we're glad if you're a part of the RTC family that you've joined us on these amazing episodes. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, realtalkchristianpodcast.com. But before we let them go, Fuller, anything else?
I don't think so.